Sure.
Pardon my
Excuse me,
language.
Senator, can I just note with you that to put this in proportion as well, no disrespect to those Australian crew, but just for your information, in relation to cargo moved around the coast, we have a situation where less than 3% of that at the moment is actually moved by Australian ships.
No, hang on.
And the rest of it is moved
that's
by foreign.
disingenuous, and you know darn well, Ms Selke, that the freight movements are measured in million tonnes per kilometre. And if you can work out how to float a ship down to Newman, Tom Price, Parabadoo or whatever, and get all that iron ore out, well then you can come back to me with some real figures. Don't try that one.
Senator Conroy, you've got the call.
That's the nonsense that comes out of the minister's
Now, have
office.
you had time for Albo to straighten you up?
Straightened up by Albo.
G'day, Albo. We've
Now,
got him back under control.
Has the delegate produced reasons for the decision to grant a temporary licence to Alcoa made in October 2015 for some 17 voyages up to October 2016 for the transportation of alumina from WA ports to the Port of Portland? Have you produced written reasons?
Senator, I think the answer to that is yes, and it was done in the context of the federal court action that was initiated by the Maritime Union of Australia.
Okay, are they publicly available? Were they tendered in court, or were they?
They were certainly
briefing?
They were certainly tendered in court, Senator.
We'd be happy to take on notice to provide those to you, Senator.
Why do you need to take on notice?
Well, I don't have them with.
Publicly
I don't
in court?
have them with me. If they've been tendered in court, we'll provide them to the committee.
Surely a quick email can get them to the committee reasonably quickly.
I'll endeavour to do that, Senator.
Thank you. Has the delegate produced reasons for a decision to grant a temporary licence to Pacific Aluminium Services made in December 2015 for some 30 voyages up to December 2016 for the transportation of alumina from the Port of Gladstone to the Port of Newcastle?
Senator, for that one, the answer is no, other than the documentation that's we produce as standard when we consider permit applications.
Could you provide the committee with the reasons?
Senator, we can certainly provide the documentation associated with that.
Does that include the reasons?
Well, Senator, the reasons...
Or do we need to have a court case for me to get the reasons that you made the decision?
Well, Senator, the reasons for the decision were, as I've indicated earlier, that...
no, this is a different...
Yeah, I realise that, sir, but it was, again, the criteria in the Act, which is considered applied when the delegate makes a decision. The key factors were that there were no notices in response, there were no comments received from interested parties in the application, and the decision was made on that basis.
Okay. Was the issue of freight rates a consideration in the delegate's decision to grant the temporary licence to Pacific Aluminium?
It was not an issue that arose in the context of the application.
Okay. Now, I'm just, again, confused by this process, and we have discussed this already, but if nobody comments, then you don't have to inform yourself of any other facts surrounding the reason for the application.
Well, Senator, again, it gets back to the architecture of the Act put in place in 2012, which was the key mechanism for...
I don't accept your interpretation, Mr Sutton. It's quite clear that one of the objectives talks about maximising. The word maximising is a fairly straightforward word, doesn't need a Wikipedia entry to find it. Maximising, but you are not asking questions about whether or not your decision maximises Australian shipping. It's clear that you've sought no information whatsoever. You've sought, other than your letters to stakeholders, you've not sought to inform yourself. That's the definition to me of willful ignorance, Mr Murdoch.
Well, Senator, again, I would comment that the object of the Act has 6 parts.
Yes, but if you don't
focusing
inform
on
yourself,
one part of
if you don't inform yourself of one of those 6 parts, I would put to you, you're failing to carry out your task. I accept the 6. I actually totally accept you've got to weigh the 6. My problem here is you've not sought to inform yourself about one of the 6. It's clear you haven't. You've admitted you didn't bother to find out whether they were seeking to permanently replace something with a foreign flag vessel. So you can't have carried out a weighted consideration of the 6 points if you didn't seek any information about one of the points.
Senator, the comment I would make there is that in terms of the practical administration of an Act, the delegate has to consider probably 4 or 5 applications a day for every day of the year. The Act is structured, and we've designed the administrative processes to make the administration of the Act as practical as possible, and a key focus of the Act, a key element of the Act to decide where there are issues that need to be focused on is the notice and response mechanism and the opportunity that third parties are given to comment on the Act. And that guides the extent to which the prioritised consideration of the various aspects of the legislation.
Okay, you can't shift it on to people who might reply to you or not. You are the legal entity, you are the legal authority, you have a legal responsibility to avail yourself of all the facts. And a simple question to the company is, are you planning on, is this temporary licence a replacement for an existing service? A really simple question. I would have thought that's a fundamental question for you to ask if you are wanting to inform yourself about one of the criteria. If you do not ask that question, you cannot possibly be meeting the test of I have considered all of the facts to allow me to make a weighting, and it may be you still would have made the same decision. But the fact that you actually have not bothered to inform yourself about one of the key criteria, I found astounding. And I can't understand how you can just sit and say, no, I didn't know any of the facts about whether it was a permanent replacement.
Senator, all I can say is that we had no basis for what, with the benefit of hindsight, was the commercial decision by the general licence holder to
Certainly
withdraw
if you
the
don't
vessel.
ask them, you'll never have a basis if you don't ask them.
Well, Senator, as I went back
Well, I'm happy to move on to some questions to you, Mr Murdoch.
Well, Senator, if you expect the officer to make that assessment and have that understanding.
Well, he's a legal authority.
I haven't finished yet, Senator. There is an advice process that goes out to all other stakeholders in the sector, and no one else asked the same question, including the MUA, who are advised as part of that process. If the MUA don't ask that question or raise that concern, why would you expect the officer to? I mean, not even the MUA, and not even in the
MUA is not in the position to know the thinking of the corporation.
Senator, you're talking about
no right to
you're
ask.
talking about a number of instances of this occurring now. A number of instances occurring now. The first time for 17 voyages. The first time, second time, the next time for 30 plus voyages. You accuse the officer of not asking the question, and yet you expect him to understand what's going on, and yet someone who is very active in the operations of the sector asks no question themselves. So I don't see why you expect the officer to ask the question when the union
Because he's the legal authority.
at all.
Because he's actually the legal authority.
And yet the reason that the union is involved is because they are specifically written into the Act to be able to ask those sorts of questions. So you expect something of the officer.
I'll take
you
you
don't expect the union in a case
dissembling.
where there have been a number of these instances occurring.
I'll take you dissembling, and I'll put it to you, Mr Sutton, this way. If in the future you get an application so that you can inform yourself around Section D, maximising the use of vessels registered in the Australian General Shipping Register, do you think, you mentioned before, in hindsight, okay, so I'm saying with foresight now, any future applications along these lines, would you consider it relevant for you to ask whether or not this is going to be a permanent replacement?
Senator, if there are reasonable grounds for having those sorts of concerns, yes, we certainly would. As in the delegate and the shipping business unit who supports the delegate within the department would ask those questions.
Okay, I'll move on from there, thank you. Mr Murdoch. When did the decision of ASP Ship Management to remove the ratings and catering crew of the MV Portland, either before the event or afterwards, at approximately 1 a.m. on the 13th of January 2016, come to your attention?
It was brought to my attention when I returned from leave, Senator. I saw the media reporting. of the event while I was on leave, and then on my return from leave.
And without wanting to in any way cast aspersion about a well-deserved leave, when did you get back after the 13th?
I returned from leave on the 23rd of January.
23rd. So who notified you, who was acting in your capacity in your absence?
My Deputy Secretary, Mr Wilson.
Mr Wilson, would you like to come to the table?